Hey, started.
Om yo brahmanam vidadhati purvam yo vai vedamscha prahinoti tasmai tam hadevam atmabuddhi prakasham mumukshurvai sharanamaham prapadye asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti. गुरुर् ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः. गुरवे सर्वलोकानां भिषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः. Okay, so last class we stopped at 305 and I told that we'll revisit 305 before moving on. But before even going to 305, I wanted to revisit 301. Okay, so let me share my screen first of all. So can you see my screen now? Is my screen visible? Can you all read
Yes.
Vivek Chudamani? Yeah. So I'm magnifying slightly. So the 301 shloka, the first line I had explained that it deals with the Brahma Chaitanyam. So that was actually a wrong interpretation. I revisited my Guruji's lecture and then I realized that I was wrong on that count. So that entire shloka is about Ahankara. So that Yova Pure Sohamiti Pratitaha actually means it is not that Navadware Pure Dehi that I talked about. That Puram, of course, is the body. That is correct. But then in the body itself, there are two versions of the Chaitanyam. There is the original Chaitanyam and there is a reflected Chaitanyam. That reflected Chaitanyam is what we call Ahankara. So this first line actually refers to the Ahankara, which is the reflected Chaitanyam. And Sohamiti Pratitaha, that phrase refers to the identification with the body mind complex. Okay, so the Acharya says that Ahankara, which is manifest in the body as an attachment and identification with the body mind complex, that Ahankara is actually the creation of the Tamoguna dominated mind. That is how the first two lines have to be interpreted. Okay, so the Ahankara, which manifests itself as the I feeling, that I feeling oriented to the body mind complex, that Ahankara is a creation of the mind, Buddhya, Tamasa Atimudhaya. It is an ignorant mind, that ignorance being caused by the Tamoguna. That ignorant Tamoguna dominated mind is what causes the Ahankara to come into existence. Okay, that when the Acharya says the mind causes the Ahankara to come into existence, it actually talks about the attachment, the emotional attachment to the body mind is a product of the mind. Yeah, and that attachment, tasyaiva nisheshataya vinasha. So that attachment has to be weakened. The rest of the interpretation I gave is correct. That vinasham actually refers to the weakening, or in one context Acharya says falsification. Falsification is to understand that it has no reality. That is falsification, and that falsification is called vinasha. So once you realize that the ahankara has no real existence, it is an illusion, then that automatically becomes weakened, and you no longer have that same strong emotion that you would otherwise have. And in that state of the mind, Brahmatma Bhavaha Pratibandha Shunya. Then you are able to realize the true nature of yourself, which is Brahman, and that realization is unobstructed, Pratibandha Shunya. So that is actually the correct interpretation for 301. Yeah, so I'm kind of setting the record straight. Okay, so I'm done with 301. If there are questions, we can discuss. Otherwise, I'll quickly go around and ask if anybody has questions on 305. No? No questions on 301 and 305, I presume. Nobody is saying anything.
Okay.
Yeah, so in that case, let's go on to 306. 306. Sadaika Rupasya
Sadaika-rupasya
Chidatmano Vibhoho
Chidatmano
Mano
Vibhoho
Vibhoho
Anandamurtehe
Anandamurtehe
Anabadya Kirtehe
Anavadya
Anavadya-kirtehe
Kirtehe Kirtaihi. No.
Naivanyatha. Sorry.
Naivanyatha
Naivanyatha
Kwapi
Vapi
Vapi
Avikarinaha Te
Avikarinaha
Avikarinaha
Te
Te
Vina Aham
Vina
Vina
Aham
Aham
Adhyasam.
Adhyasam
Adhyasam
I should actually combine Aham Adhyasam. Vina Aham Adhyasam
Vina
Vina
Aham
Aham
Adhyasam
Adhyasam
Amushya Samsritihi.
Amushya
Amushya
Samsriti
Samsritihi.
Okay. Sadaika Rupasya Chidatmano Vibhor Anandamurte Ranavadya Kirtehe Naivanyatha Kwapya Avikarinaste Vinaham Adhyasam Amushya Samsritihi. Okay. So the first two lines provide a description of Brahma Chaitanyam. Brahma Chaitanyam is our true nature. So whenever I mention Brahma Chaitanyam, you have to mentally translate it as my true nature, my true nature. Yeah, that is how one should practice the Vedantic teaching. That should become kind of automated response. Brahman should always internally come as I, my true nature. Yeah, so Sada Eka Rupasya. Sada Eka Rupasya means the one which never changes. You know, Avikarinaha is there somewhere. The third line, last word is Avikarinaha. That same Avikarinaha is Sadaika Rupasya. The Eka Rupam means only one form, only one nature. Here the word Rupam should be taken as Swarupam. Swarupam means true nature. So the true nature is what? Satyam Jnanam Anantam. Never changing. You know, as I said in one of the earlier shlokas interpretation, I said, whenever we talk about change, there has to be a changeless base with reference to which you measure all the changes. So this I consciousness is never changing, and that is Eka Rupaha, Sada Eka Rupaha, Chidatmanaha. Chidatmanaha means Chaitanya Rupam. Again, here the word Atma means again true nature. Chit means consciousness, Chaitanyam. So Chidatmanaha, that whose nature is pure consciousness, Vibhoho. So Vibhu means the infinite one. The infinite one, and that means Anantaha. So in one way you can say the first line is a paraphrasing of Satyam Jnanam Anantam of the Taittiriya Upanishad. So Sada Eka Rupaha means Satyam. No, one of the definitions of Satyam we said is it is available in all the three times, past, present, and future, and everywhere. And it is never changing. So that is Sada Eka Rupaha Satyam. Chid Atmanaha is Jnanam, Chaitanya Swarupam. Vibhu is Anantam. So it is another way of saying Satyam Jnanam Anantam. Then Ananda Murtehe. Ananda Murtehe means it is happiness itself. You know, it is not happy as an adjective. It is happiness itself. That is Ananda Murtehe. Then Anavadya Kirtehe. Now, Avadyam means some kind of a blemish or some kind of a defect. And Anavadyam means completely free from all defects. So there is another word, Anjanam. No, not Anjanam. Niranjanam. Yeah. So Niranjanam means blemishless. Similarly, Anavadyam is blemishless. And Anavadya Kirtehe means the reputation or Kirti is fame. You know, the fame of Brahman is what? It is blemishless, pure, blemishless. All these are adjectives for Brahman. Okay, for such a Brahman, Naiva Anyatha. No, that third line will come a little later. Okay. Kwapi avikarinaha. So that avikari is also a reference to Chaitanya, Brahman. Okay. Now samsritihi. Let us go to the word samsritihi, the last word of the shloka. Samsriti means samsara, the suffering, all the pain and anger and disappointment and all the emotions that we go through, physical pain, mental pain, agony, worry, fear. All of that is samsara, samsriti. Okay, now the Acharya wants to say for the Brahman as described in the first two lines, how is samsara even possible? No, samsara is not at all possible, but we seem to have samsara, we seem to have suffering. So the Acharya says that suffering is because of the superimposition. Vina ahamadhyasam. That ahamadhyasam here refers to ahankara. So that aham adhyasam is superimposition, and it is also the false identification with the body-mind complex. So the false identification with the body-mind complex, which we called ahankara until now, and in this shloka it is referred by the word adhyasam. Without that adhyasam, there is no way this Brahman can even have samsara in any form. So, naiva anyatha, in no other manner. Anyatha means otherwise. Yeah. So that anyatha and vina have to be combined. The only way this Brahman, this blemishless Brahman, the blemishless Chaitanyam can have samsara is through a superimposition. Yeah. So that is the overall meaning of the 306. I mean, I did not go into the word by word meaning of the third line because the construction is a little complex. So I thought I'll just give you the overall meaning and not really dive into all the word by word analysis. That doesn't help. Yeah. So you have to understand the Brahma Chaitanyam is actually limitless. It is blemishless. It is Ananda Swarupam. But still, in spite of it, we all go through the samsara of agony, pain and anger and all that. That is only because of the superimposition of the body-mind complex. We falsely identify with the body-mind complex. And that is why we get into samsara. That is the meaning of 306. Okay. Any questions? Anybody?
No question.
Yeah. So then we'll go to 307. Tasmat
Tasmat
ahankaram imam
Ahankaram
swashatrum
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 bhokturgale
Bhokturgale
Kantakavat
Kantakavat
Pratitam
Pratitam
Vichidya
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 Vijnana Mahasina
Vijnana
Mahasina
Putam
Sputam
Putam
Bhunkshva,
Bhunktva
not Bhunkshva, it is Bhunkshva. Bhunkshva
Bhunkshva
Atma Samrajya Sukham
Atma Samrajya Sukham
Sukham
Yatheshtam.
Yatheshtam
Tasmad ahankaramimam swashatrum bhokturgale kantakavat pratitam vichidya vijnana mahasina sphutam bhunkshvatma samrajya sukham yatheshtam. Okay, so this shloka uses the example of someone trying to eat a dish, a very favorite dish this person likes, and somehow he managed to get that dish, and he's taken a bit of it and he's about to put it into his mouth, or you can even say he has already put it into his mouth and he's trying to swallow it. He's trying to swallow it, but then suddenly he experiences some kind of a block in his throat. Something else is already sitting there, maybe some other piece of some hard stuff he had eaten just before, and that block in the throat is preventing this favorite dish from entering the esophagus or whatever food pipe. Okay, so there is an obstruction in this person's act of enjoying that favorite dish. That is the example, the situation. Okay, so we'll go to the second line first. Bhoktuhu gale kantakavat pratitam. Bhoktu is the person who is eating. Bhokta. Bhoktuhu is possessive case, sixth case. Gale means in the throat. Kantakavat means, kantakam is a thorn or a small piece of whatever, kantakam really means thorn or a needle. Yeah, but something that is stopping the throat, that is kantakavat pratitam. So you experience some kind of a block in the throat. Okay. Here that ahankara, the ahankara that is mentioned in the first line is compared to that thorn, or compared to that blocking, whatever is blocking the throat, that is ahankara. Okay. So now what would you do normally, if you are having some kind of a block in the throat? Either you drink some water, or you try to cough it out, or put some, if it requires a surgery also, maybe you call somebody like a doctor and get it out if it is really life threatening. Normally these kind of small things, once you cough a few times, it will come out. Yeah, that's a simple thing. But this ahankara getting into the throat and blocking you, that favorite dish that I mentioned, right, that is your brahma jnana anubhavam. So you have gone through Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, acquired this knowledge, that Aham Brahmasmi knowledge, and that Brahma Jnanam is supposed to give you a certain happiness, a certain Purnatvam, satisfaction, and all that. And that happiness from Brahma Jnanam is the favorite dish comparison. So you have to compare, there is an example, there is an original. So the example and the original have these parallels. So the obstruction in the throat is your ahankara. The favorite dish that you're trying to eat is the Brahmajnana Ananda Anubhava. So the Brahmajnana Ananda Anubhavam is obstructed by ahankara, exactly like how the favorite dish is not being enjoyed because of the block in the throat. That is the overall picture. Now, Vichidya Vijnana Mahasina. Vichidya means to cut. To cut. Vichidya is to cut. Vijnana Mahasina. Asihi means a sword. Asihi is a sword. Vijnana here refers to nididhyasana. Normally, Vijnanam would refer to the knowledge itself, but here we are talking about using the knowledge to, Guruji calls it a de-addiction process. The ahankara in another context, the Guruji compares it to some kind of an addiction. And we are not addicted to this ahankara just for 10 years or 20 years or one janma. This ahankara addiction has been with us for so many millions of janmas. So this whole Vedantic Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, Jnana Yoga exercise is a de-addiction process. And when you are trying to de-addict yourself, there is always a chance of re-addiction. So if there are people who are familiar with how Alcoholics Anonymous works, or how people have tried to give up smoking, or even trying to give up drinking tea, coffee, these are all addictions. And when you are trying to give up something, there is always a temptation to go back to the old addiction. So this ahankara, the traces of ahankara can reignite the the old way of habitual way of thinking. So that is the de-addiction process being obstructed, and a re-addiction risk is coming. So this shloka is a typical example of that. So Vijnana Mahasina Vichidya means use Nididhyasanam as the sword to cut off that ahankara thorn. It doesn't mean that you cut your neck itself. No, that should not be extended to the food example. The food example is over once you understand that ahankara is the obstruction. That's all. The sword and cutting and all is only for the ahankara. That you have to limit there. So you have to use the nididhyasanam process as a sword, and using that sword weaken the ahankara. Then what happens? Atma samrajya sukham bhungshva. Bhungshva means to consume, to enjoy. Bhungshva literally means to eat. Yeah, but you cannot eat that Atma samrajya sukham. It is more to be enjoyed mentally. But that enjoyment is what? It manifests itself as peace, security, happiness. It's not some happiness coming from something external. It is an unconditional happiness that is caused by your own purnatvam. That is the happiness. Yeah. So all that enjoyment is here referred as Atma Samrajya Sukham. Atma Samrajya Sukham and Yatheshtam. Yatheshtam means without any limit. Because normally, let's say you are throwing a party and you're ordering a big cake or some kind of a big sweet. If you have to distribute that sweet among all the participants in the party, then the more number of people are there, the quantity that will come to each person will be smaller. So there is always a risk that you will not get enough quantity that you will really like to have. But in the case of this Brahmajnana Anubhavam or Brahmajnana Phala Anubhavam, there is no risk of sharing it with others, because it is infinite and any number of people can have the same amount of unlimited enjoyment. So that is the word yatheshtam. That yatheshtam is you have everything for yourself. Imagine you ordered a 5 kilo cake and ate the entire 5 kilo cake all by yourself without giving to anybody even one crumb. That kind of a fulfillment, that is yatheshtam. Yeah. So you enjoy Atmajnana Phalam by reducing and weakening the ahankara and enjoy this benefit. That is 307. Okay. Can we move on to 308? Any questions?
Okay.
Right. Tato
Tato
ahamadehe
ahamadehe
vinivartya vrittim
vinivartya vrittim
santyakta ragah
santyakta ragah
paramartha labhat
paramartha labhat
तूष्णीं समास्व
तूष्णीं samasva
आत्मसुखानुभूत्या
atmasukhanubhutya
पूर्णात्मना
purnatmana
ब्रह्मणि
brahmani
निर्विकल्पः
nirvikalpaha
ततोहमादेर्विनिवर्त्य वृत्तिं सन्त्यक्तरागः परमार्थलाभात् तूष्णीं समास्वात्मसुखानुभूत्या पूर्णात्मना ब्रह्मणि निर्विकल्पः. Okay? So tataha, therefore, tataha means therefore, ahamadehe vinivartya vrittim. Ahamadehe here refers to the ahankara. Aham adi, that is the attachment to the physical body, subtle body, and causal body, intellect, everything. So that is body mind complex, what we call body mind intellect complex. Vinivartya vrittim. Vritti here is thought, and thought refers to the attachment. And even it is not just attachment, even some kind of a weak thought which can become stronger if you encourage it to persist. That is also vritti. Vritti is a thought, and it need not always be a strong thought. It can be, all thoughts begin as a weak thought, as a small idea, and then your mind tends to amplify the thought and makes it stronger and stronger and stronger. So here the acharya is cautioning on, even a small weak ahankara related thought can disturb your nididhyasanam. That is the warning the acharya wants to give. In Bhagavad Gita there is a parallel shloka that's somewhere in the second chapter, I think. Oh my god.
yeah. It's, I think uktva tushnim babhuvaha.
No, uktva tushnim babhuva, where is it?
I think first chapter itself.
No, the first chapter there is no teaching. Anyway,
Okay.
so first chapter is all about Arjuna's lamenting. Yeah.
Okay.
So this comes somewhere in the second, third, fourth chapter somewhere. Anyway, I'll try to recollect. My Bhagavad Gita book is downstairs, so I'm not able to immediately pick it up. So there the Bhagavan says, even a small thought, when allowed to take root in your mind, the mind can then amplify it gradually, and it can become stronger and stronger and stronger. So one place I remember is in the second chapter he says, ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसः संगस्तेषूपजायते संगात् संजायते कामः कामात् क्रोधोऽभिजायते क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमः स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति. So this comes somewhere in the between the 58th
Second
and
chapter.
62nd or some shloka, that place.
Yes.
58 onwards. Yeah. So there he says, even a small thought, your mind is capable of picking it up, and then slowly it becomes bigger and bigger, and it becomes a very strong desire. So that kind of a warning acharya gives in this shloka. So vinivartya vrittim means you have to be watchful. You have to be very watchful of what thoughts come in your mind and nip them.
I can't hear anything. Can somebody else hear something?
No, I also cannot. I think.
Even I'm not able to hear anything.
I'll send him. I'll send a message in the group on WhatsApp.
Actually involves, it's very closely connected to Viveka. Viveka means what is Nityam and what is Anityam. That distinction is Viveka, and Vairagyam is to focus on the Nitya Vastu and avoid getting hooked on to Anitya Vastu. That is the Vairagyam part. Now I think somebody raised their hand. Did somebody raise the hand?
So we couldn't hear you in between. Maybe for
Okay,
10,
where
15
did I
seconds.
get lost? Where did you
I
lose
think it
me?
was right after the you mentioned that it is you were talking about the Bhagavad Gita shlokas 62, I believe.
From there itself you lost. Huh? Okay. So I was giving some shlokas actually. Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha, Sangasteshu Pajayate and all that. And I mentioned that it comes somewhere after the 58th shloka up to 64, 65. And,
Right.
and then I was saying that there the same idea is being given that even a small thought can eventually become a very strong desire and it can lead to a lot of problems. And exactly like that, here the Acharya says you have to be very watchful, very alert, and any ahankara related thought has to be nipped in the bud. This is what I was telling. Now, did you hear me now this time around?
Yes, sir. Whatever you
Yes.
said after this, we couldn't hear.
Okay. Is that the case with everybody or was that a selective problem?
No, it's
I think
everybody.
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 Okay. So I don't know how much I should repeat, but I think whatever I said now was audible to everybody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So I was just on the first line only. I didn't even go to the second line. So I was saying that Vinivartya Vrittim means avoiding ahankara related thoughts. Okay. And Santyakta Ragaha is to weaken all the attachment related emotions. And I was talking about Viveka, Vairagya, and Shamadhi Shatka Sampati. Did you hear that?
No, sir.
I was telling that in the
No.
very early lectures, I mentioned 4 qualities: Viveka, Vairagya, Shamadhi Shatka Sampatti, and Mumukshutvam. So the Santyakta Ragaha is actually another word for Vairagyam. And Vairagyam and Vivekam, they go together. And Vivekam actually means to distinguish between the Nitya Vastu and Anitya Vastu. And Vairagyam means you focus on the Nitya Vastu and avoid focusing on the Anitya Vastu. Now, I think this was also not audible in the previous round, if I am right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is what I had said. So basically, Santyakta Raga is to develop more Vairagya, and Paramartha Labhat means in this process, you become more and more closely identified with your Brahman nature. The word Paramartha can be given 2 meanings. Parama Artha actually means Brahman. Artha here is a substance. And Parama Artha means the supreme substance, which is Brahman itself. That is Brahman. And Labha means what? You are not getting some Brahman from somewhere. You are simply discovering your own true nature as Brahman. That is one way of saying Paramartha Labha. And the other meaning is Parama Purushartha, which is Moksha. So here Paramartha Labha means you become liberated. That is Jivan Mukti. So in this process, by remaining watchful and by avoiding emotional attachments, you become liberated even as you are living. You become a Jivan Mukta. Okay. And okay, was that also audible now? Is there an audio problem?
No.
No, we could hear it.
Right.
No.
So that was the first 2 lines. Right? The first 2 lines. Then Tushnim Samaswa means keep quiet. Tushni means silence. Tushnim samasva means keep quiet. Keep quiet means don't get into unnecessary arguments or unnecessary discussions. Talk only when necessary, those kind of things. Mananat munihi, maunat munihi, we say all these things. So it is always good to be limited in your words, because very often we find that problems come because we say something and it leads to more problems. Yeah. So minimizing speech is one of the advices that our shastras give. Don't talk unnecessarily. So that is Tushnim Samasva. And in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there is a mantra which gives the same idea, but it's a fairly elaborate mantra. Tameva dhiro vijnaya pragyam kurvita brahmanaha nanudhyayan bahun shabdan vacho viglapanam hi tat. That's the mantra. So there the mantra says, once you have become a jnani, nanudhyayan bahun shabdan, don't get into the habit of using too many words. Bahun shabdan, don't use too many words. Okay, vacho viglapanam hi tat, because ultimately you are wasting your words. Viglapanam means wastage. So that is the advice from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So here Acharya simply says, Tushnim samasva, just shut up, keep quiet, don't talk. Yeah, talk only when necessary. Atma sukhanubhutya. So you might ask, what do I do if I don't talk? So he says, just enjoy that Atma sukham. You enjoy that Brahman nature and the Purnatvam that the knowledge gives you, and be happy with that. And Purnatmana Brahmani nirvikalpaha. Purnatmana. So that Brahman is Purnam. Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, that mantra you all know. Yeah. So that Purnam, you keep reflecting on that Purna Atma, Purna Brahman, which is Nirvikalpa, and enjoy that Purnatvam generated bliss. So that is the advice in 308. Okay. Now, since there was some audio issue in between, I'm not very sure if everybody understood the complete import of this shloka. So let me know if we need to have any discussion, or if we can move on to the next shloka.
I think we can move on to the next shloka.
Okay. Thank you so much. Then we'll go to 309. Samoola kritopi
Samoola
mahanaham punaha
Mahanaham
Mahan aham punaha
vyullekitaha
vyullekitaha
syat yadi
Sad
syat yadi
chetasa kshanam
chetasa kshanam
sanjivya vikshepashatam
sanjivya vikshepashatam
karoti
karoti
nabhasvata pravrishi
nabhasvata pravrishi
varido yatha.
varido yatha.
Samoola kritopi mahanaham punaha vyullekitaha syad yadi chetasa kshanam sanjivya vikshepashatam karoti nabhasvata pravrishi varido yatha. Again, the same idea that we have to be very watchful about our thoughts, and make sure that we don't get distracted and lose our focus on the nididhyasanam. So that same idea is here given with a different example. So the example is in the third and fourth line. So I'll go to the example first, and then we will go to the first and second line and get the real message. So the example is how the wind gathers small bits of clouds, small bits of rain-bearing clouds,
Varita
gathers them into a big cloud and then causes a downpour in the form of rain. Okay, that is the example. So apparently there are small bits of rain bearing clouds scattered all over the place, and when the rainy season comes, the wind begins to work, and all these bits and pieces of rain bearing clouds are somehow brought together gradually, and a huge body of cloud, rain bearing clouds, is formed. And then it starts pouring, because for the rain to pour also, I think you need a certain threshold of water content. If there is, if the water content of the cloud is less than that threshold, the cloud may be there, but the rain won't fall down. So that's a natural process that happens. So the Acharya is pointing to that. The word nabhaswa, nabhaswaha means wind. Nabhaswa refers to the wind. Varidaha means the cloud. Varida is cloud. And pravrishi refers to the downpour. Yatha means just like. So that is the example part. Okay. And what does the wind do? Nabhaswa vikshepa shatam sanjivya karoti. Vikshepa shatam means hundreds of small pieces scattered all around. Vikshepa means actually to be scattered. Okay. Sanjivya means to rejuvenate. I am sure you would have heard of Sanjeevani Mantram in the Puranas, or the Sanjeevani Parvata that Hanuman brought to revive Lakshmana and Ramayana. These are all Sanjeevya. The word Sanjeevya means to rejuvenate, to bring back to life. That is Sanjeevya. So the wind, by gathering all these hundreds of small pieces of clouds, brings them back to life by forming one big cloud. That is the example. So the second, third, and fourth line is the example line. Similarly, in the first line he says, Samula krittopi mahanaham punaha. So Samula krittaha means by and large weakened, completely weakened. Really speaking, Samula krittaha means cut up to the root. Moolam is the root. Krittam means to cut. Samulam means along with the root. So you think you have eliminated your ahankara right up to the root. You may think. But then there is a small remnant of ahankara that still remains. And that ahankara is referred as mahanaham. Even that small amount of ahankara can become a big demon and do what? Punaha, once again, vyullekhitah syat iti yadi chetasa kshanam. Chetasa means by means of a thought, and kshanam means a momentary thought. So even that greatly weakened and greatly emaciated ahankara, in one moment of weakness, if you allow it to come in the form of a thought, it can become vyullekitaha. Vyullekitaha means it becomes very gigantic, very elaborate, very detailed. Yeah. So that is the connection to the third and fourth line where the cloud example is given. So even you may think that your ahankara is under control, but one small thought here or there, how does ahankara come? It comes in the form of various roles. It would be the spouse ahankara, or the parent ahankara, or the employee ahankara, or the employer ahankara. Ahankara comes always in these kind of roles. So when you are playing a role, you have to be conscious that you are playing a role and stop playing the role once the context for that role is over. As long as you are in the office, you may play the employee or employer ahankara. And even there, you don't play the employee or employer ahankara all the time. On a given task, if the task requires a different ahankara, a different role, you have to switch roles. So like in English they say, right, you have to wear a different hat. So you keep switching hats depending on the role. But then there has to be a time when you're not wearing any hat at all. You're just being yourself. So that is the maturity with which you handle ahankara. But if you keep wearing one or the other favorite hat, then that hat becomes a permanent fixture on your head. And then you keep playing that role no matter whether that role is required in the context or not. So that is the a sort of secular way of understanding how ahankara plays. Okay, but here the Acharya says, look, even a small thought can trigger the ahankara, and it can become a huge problem without you realizing it. Exactly like how small bits of clouds can become one large rain-bearing cloud. That is 309. I hope the example was quite simple, not very complicated.
Yes,
Any
sir.
questions? Any discussions? Can we move on?
Yes,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, right. So 310. Nigrihya shatroho
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 ahamovakashah
ahamovakashah
kvachinna deyo
kvachinna deyo
vishayanuchintaya
vishayantaya
ta eva sanjeevana hetuh
eva sanjeevana hetu
asya
asya
prakshina jambira taroho prakshina jambira taroho
prakshina jambir taroho
ivambu.
ivambu.
Okay, then one more example, similar example. I'll again deal with the example first. That makes it easy to understand. Then we'll go to the first two lines. So third and fourth line, the example is there. So the last line, Jambira taruhu. A taru is a tree. A taru is a tree. Jambira taru is some kind of a tree. I don't know exactly what the Jambira taru is. It's some kind of a tree. Yeah. Prakshina. Prakshina means it is almost at the point of dying. You know, maybe there was a drought or something, and the tree was deprived of all nourishments, and it was dying. It is almost dead. Yeah. And then suddenly some downpour of one short rainfall comes, or somebody pours some water or something, and then the tree becomes live again. It starts reviving itself. Okay. So sanjeevana hetuhu means the trigger point for rejuvenation. See that sanjeevana came in the previous sloka also. It came in the verb form. Sanjeevya. There we saw sanjeevya. It is sanjeevana. It's a noun or adjective. So that dying, almost dying tree becomes revived by a small amount of downpour or some quantity of water. That is the example. Now the original is the ahankara, which we have been trying to tame through the nididhyasanam process. That is the tree here. That is the tree which is almost dead. And what happens? Some stray thought, vishaya anuchintaya. Vishayanuchintaya. Chinta is thought or worry. Anuchintanam means to follow the thought. To follow the thought. You know, the Bhagavad Gita shloka that I was trying to recollect, that is also relevant here. See, I don't remember the actual shloka, but the meaning of the shloka I remember. So Krishna says, even for a jnani, sometimes disturbing thoughts will come. A jnani is not completely immune to disturbing thoughts, but the jnani does not allow these thoughts to become strong, and he nips them in the bud. So this is the shloka. I will definitely try to get the original and try to tell you next class. So that's also somewhere in the second chapter or third chapter. Yeah. So he says that jnani does not have any guarantee that disturbing thoughts will not come to him, but the jnani handles these disturbing thoughts by shutting them out. He does not repeat or allow them to take root in his mind. Okay, exactly like that. Here in this shloka, Kvachinna avakashah deyah. You know that Kvachinna is in the second line, first word. Deyah is the second line, second word. Avakashaha is the last word of the first line. You have to connect all the three. Avakashaha means here opportunity or time. Opportunity or time. Kvachin na means, kvachit means not even a little bit. Na deyah should not be given. So the disturbing thoughts or ahankara related thoughts should not be encouraged even for a short moment. Avakashah kvachinna deyah. Vishaya anuchintaya. That anuchintanam is important. Anuchintanam means you get a thought. You get a very small trigger of a thought. And then your mind latches onto the thought and then keeps repeating that thought for quite some time. And during that time, the thought becomes bigger and bigger and stronger and stronger. That is anuchintanam. The first incident of the thought is not anuchintanam. The first incident of the thought is chintanam. The thought just comes and knocks on your mind's door. You should not open the door. You should look through that peeping glass and see what thought is there and then throw it out. The moment you open the door and allow it into your mind, that becomes anuchintanam. Then anuchintanam means you keep following the thought. Then the thought becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it kind of becomes a monster. So, nigrihya shatroho ahamovakashaha. Shatru here is the enemy. Ahamaha is the ahankara. So, nigrihya means to catch hold of. To catch hold of means to control. To control the enemy, the thought, the disturbing thought that knocks on the door of your mind is actually the enemy for the peace of your mind. So you have to take care of that enemy by catching him by the throat and not allow even a small amount of time in which that thought can multiply and amplify and become big. So that is the first two lines. Yeah, so I think I gave the meaning. I think it's quite simple. If there are any questions, follow-ups, we can talk about. Was that clear?
Yes.
Vasudevanji.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, if that's it, then we will stop here. 310. We did 5 shlokas today, and we'll continue with 311 from the next class. Then I suppose no one has any questions. So can we chant the closing shlokas?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyase Sarvesham Swastirбhavatu Sarvesham Shantirbhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Sukhinas Santu Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay. Thank you so much. Namaste. We'll meet next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you.